Hello there, everyone. This is episode, I lose track, I think it's number 10 of Accountants Live with accountants doing great things. If you're listening on the Facebook Live, put hashtag live in the comments. If you're listening on the podcast, good to have you here. And if you're listening on replay in the group, then put hashtag replay. Let's crack on. So today I've got Joe of Nephos Accountants joining me today for this lunchtime session. And Joe's going to be talking about all things to do with advisory, that buzzword of the year it seems to be in accounting circles. We all need to be doing advisory. Compliance is dead. So we're going to be unraveling a bit of that today with Joe. So Joe, first, just to kick things off, give us a little bit of introduction about yourself, your background, how you came about starting your firm, Nephos, where you are, what size it is, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, cool. Thank you for having me, and welcome to everybody here. So, as Rose said, my name is Joe David. I founded a firm, Nephos, 6.5 years ago now, nearly 7, in fact, in Cheltenham in the southwest. My background is industry, so my background is working in companies and working in the finance department, management accounts, FD work. And to be honest, I never set foot in a practice before I set up my own. So the way I've tried to set up and run this practice is very different to what I expect and see from a lot of the traditional practices. Our mindset is completely advisory focused, and we actually call ourselves a firm of business advisors rather than a firm of accountants, because that's where my background and my experience comes from. So we've got just under 200 clients. Some people might be thinking 200 business advisory clients sounds fun, but actually it's not quite as fun as that. We did, when we built the practice, as much as the business advisory side was part of our core offering, naturally we picked up a lot of compliance-based work, VAT returns, tax returns and stuff like that. So of those 200, a lot of those are still your basic compliance-based stuff. There's 9 of us in the team. That's a bit about who we are.
Brilliant. How long have you been going, Joe? When did you set up?
So January 2014 was the day we started.
Yeah. All right. So just over 6 years. But you've done amazing to get to a team of 9 and 200 clients. So that's really interesting, actually, because like you said, you had no practice experience, no practice background, and yet you decided to set up your own accounting firm, knowing that you would have to do all the things that a typical kind of accounting firm owner does. So how did you get around that? How did you ensure that you still had the ability to provide those sort of compliance services to your clients, yet getting them in and providing the lucrative advisory stuff? Did you kind of build the team right from the outset or outsource it? What did you do?
So the starting point for the reason for the firm was what I actually thought I was going to do was consult a day, 2 days, a week or a month or whatever in businesses as a kind of virtual FD, but going in and, outsourcing a little bit. That's what I thought I was going to do. Very quickly, you realize you can't scale your own time. So that for me was not, I've got an entrepreneurial mindset, and that for me was not a scalable business. So at that point, I had to rethink how I approached it, because I couldn't scale really easily on that basis. So without dumbing down the compliance-based work, as accountants and as we train, regardless whether that's in industry or in practice, we understand the basics of producing a set of accounts, producing a VAT return, and the quirks and the queries that came off the bat were very minimal. And I have a tax advice line, and they were the main questions around tax and the application of certain things, which I use a tax advice line for. So from day one, we didn't outsource anything. We don't outsource either now. It took probably about 18 months, not quite, to hire the first person. A lot of bedroom paperwork and that sort of stuff for quite a long time. But then we hired somebody, and then it kind of went from there.
Okay. Oh, brilliant. So I guess you've done it kind of backwards in a way, which perhaps is, because in most accountants, they kind of start off doing the compliance work, and then they realize actually the money is in the advisory stuff, and then start to branch out and do all the lucrative FD and FC type services. So talk to me about kind of, how did you go about finding clients in those early days? How were you able to find the kind of clients for whom advisory was something that they're willing to pay for? Were you quite specific as to who your ideal client was, and what marketing techniques did you deploy to go and find those type of clients?
Yeah, so we were, or I say we at the time, it was me, but we were specific in what we wanted, and the thing that spoke volumes for me was for the clients to me was the experience that I had, and that I was different. And I know that I didn't want to use the word different, because everybody in accountancy at the moment says they're different for one reason or another. But at the time, 6 years ago, of me offering that service, it wasn't like your typical firm in the area. Do you know what I mean? All the typical firms in the area offered the typical services. So for me to come along and say, I understand what you're talking about. I'm sat in a client's office today. They're a manufacturing business, and I understand what they're talking about because I worked in manufacturing. Do you know what I mean? I was part of the fundamentals, so we can have conversations with the production manager that I understand that other people may not. So that really helped in the marketing, if you like, the conversations I was having with people. I understood what they were talking about. But the key thing was networking, and I went networking, and I don't do networking very often anymore, but I went networking, and I would speak to people, and like I say, I would relate to them and they would relate to me. And then the conversation started from there.
Mm. Yeah, a bit of an alien concept these days, isn't it? Networking, since the
I know, yeah.
yeah. Networking was that.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So in terms of okay, so let's talk a little bit about the how. How did you package up your services to make it desirable for the clients that you were going after? Was it, at the time, was it kind of, I will provide an outsourced FD function for you, where I come in once a week or half a day a week, or whatever the case may be, or was it another way? And then how has that evolved since the early days, and what are you doing now?
So the honest answer is, how did we package it up in the early days?
Yeah.
We did that. And for those on the podcast, I'm putting my finger in the air and seeing what happens, seeing which way the wind's blowing today. It was very, very much around, who are you? What do you want? What do I think I can get away with in a bad way, but what do I think I can price and still win this work? Do you see what I mean? And that, jumping quickly onto where we are now, and I'll go back, that's extremely different to where we are now. However, and I listened to Carl Reeder's podcast with you recently, and somebody asked at the end what they would do differently today, what he would do differently today if he started today. And one of the things he said was, don't price your mates at the low fee, because then you build a firm and a culture based on low fees. And we kind of did that in the early stages, because we needed clients and because we wanted people in the door. We priced it at the time that was fine for me on my own with no office, but had no scalability to it. So in the very early stages, we won work because we were cheaper and I was more relatable than the typical accountant around the corner. Now, that has evolved dramatically, as you can imagine, since then. But that was the basis of how we won work in the first instance, was kind of price it to win it, if that makes sense.
And so how did you price it in reality? Was it kind of on a day rate? Was it time based? Was it using any other pricing methodology?
So at the time, again, it was based on timesheets and day rates, and again, that was a lot cheaper than it is now. And the reason for that, and we still, in our firm, we still do timesheets. I know there's a lot of debates around timesheets, but we do them for profitability analysis and simply that. But we do have clients like the one I'm at today. We're working on a project. The only way to price the project I'm doing today is on time, because there is no fixed outcome. Do you know what I mean? There is a bigger goal, but ultimately there's little steps along the way. So we at the time we used timesheets to say, how long do I think it's going to take me to perform this role, and how much does that equate to, and how much money do I want to make from it? That was how we did it.
Yeah. And has your mindset evolved over time from a day rate to more of a fixed pricing methodology on say other clients, where you are kind of clearly defined as to what the scope is?
Yeah, completely. And it was very quick that we were fixed fee very quick. We were cloud based from day one. We were direct debit from, if not day one, day 60 type. Do you know what I mean? We were so to say we were timesheet based is unfair, but on those particular jobs that had a much broader scope, there wasn't please do a VAT return and a tax return. It was please, transform my whole finance function for me. There was much more, because I was new to charging for it. I didn't know how to charge it. The only way I felt right was timesheet. So now we are hugely package based. We have compliance packages and we have advisory packages. And if you want both, they get added together to give you a total monthly fee. They're transparent, they're open. We show them to prospects and to clients, and within that package, they get certain services on certain periods of time, if that makes sense.
Sure. Okay, so talk to us a bit about, I'm guessing you lead with the advisor, right? Because that's where your value proposition is in terms of delivering that high level FD work. So, what does that look like? What do those packages look like? How have you packaged them up? Is it by turnover? Do you go through a process of defining scope, by asking questions? Talk to me about, what do your packages look like for the advisor?
Yeah, so if I first talk about the packages themselves, and then we'll talk about how people fit into those. So like I say, we've got our compliance packages, and you've got, the minimum fee is 150 plus VAT and 0. And that is for, kind of basic, no VAT returns, a basic bookkeeping every quarter, and an annual set of accounts for a limited company. That's pretty much what you get for that, right? And then that goes up based on frequency of bookkeeping and transactional base of bookkeeping and all that sort of stuff. Not hugely, but to a point. And then we've got, so they're kind of a side note. Then we've got our advisory packages. So our first package is our starter package, which is 6 monthly advisory. So that's a 6 monthly Fathom report, 6 monthly, we use Clarity as well, 6 monthly Clarity review and action plan with the client. And that's just to keep them accountable for their business at a 6 month point and at the year end point, effectively. And then we go up to a quarterly package, a monthly package, and then above that, we've got our kind of bespoke business modeling. We'll sit down with you, we'll go through every nook and cranny of your business, and we'll help you understand the ins and outs. And, for example, last week, same client I'm with now, we did a stock take. I was here on the ground helping with that stock take, not necessarily counting, but making sure going around that everybody was doing the right thing. And that's all from my experience. So that falls into our highest tier package, and that's a bespoke service for that particular client. So the way that works then is we have that scoping call, or we've got a scoping form. They fill that out and give us a bit of information about their business. Depending on what they want, me or one of the team will call them and then talk through that scoping form. And at that point, we will then share our document with them, which shows them the packages. And at that point, we then discuss where we feel, because at the end of the day, it's all very well me saying, you fit into this category. If they don't feel they do, and if they don't feel the price is right for them, it doesn't matter what I think. And we want buy-in from day one. So I say, this is where I think you fit. Where do you think? They say here, if it's lower, I ask them to justify why they think it's lower, why they think they should fall into the lower package. Do you see what I mean? So we have that open conversation, and then eventually we come to a middle ground where we agree. And sometimes that's immediately at the same point. And that's how we then get to the final price.
Okay. And what do those price points look like then for your starter package all the way up to your business modeling package?
So the starter package is 200 a month. Mm-hmm. So if we take and let's say the bespoke, so they're all from the bespoke one is 1850, but that is very much a from because with the 18, for example, the client I'm with today, we've got 1850, let's say, as the package with them, and then I spend a day and a half last week helping them with a stock take. That's outside of the scope of that retainer. Do you see what I mean? Because that's a real bespoke project they've asked me to be involved in. So there are differences to it, but let's just assume someone wants the middle package of bookkeeping and the starter package of advisory. They would pay roughly £300, let's say, for the compliance side. They'd pay £200 a month for the advisory side. So their total bill would be £500 a month, and that's excluding software and VAT. And they will get, let's say, quarterly bookkeeping with that package, and they'll get this 6 monthly advisory work as well.
And what form does that advisory work take? So you mentioned management accounts. Does it include quarterly meetings? Does it include unlimited support to you? What things does your typical kind of starter, middle, and premium package include?
Yeah, so the starter package will, like I say, will include this 6 monthly report. So you'll get a 6 monthly Fathom report with commentary, and that will come on to what I think real advisory is in a minute. And you'll get a 6 monthly clarity review and action plan off the back of that. And then in theory, that's all they get, if you like. And then the next talking point is the next 6 month point where they get those two things again. Now, in reality, that's why I said in theory, in reality, what we want to do is help them. I don't want to just give them a 6 monthly report, walk away and not talk to them. So in reality, if they've got questions, if they've got concerns, I'd rather we help them on the journey. So the 6 month point was realistic. Mm-hmm. And then they see the value in what we've done and they continue paying for it. Then we say, see you in 6 months. They don't do it. And then they go, well, you're adding no value because we didn't do it. Do you know what I mean? And then they don't want to pay it anymore. So whilst we say it's a 6 monthly package, naturally there are much more touch points in the communication. And also, most of these people we don't have very many clients where we don't do the bookkeeping. Mm-hmm. And that's because we want to control the input so we can control the output. So most people are paying us, let's just say, at a minimum of a quarterly bookkeeping package. Mm-hmm. So at minimum, they're getting a quarterly conversation anyway around the VAT and the bookkeeping, and they can always raise questions and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, brilliant. So, I'm with you on that in terms of, us doing the bookkeeping. I think times have come now whereas previously it was kind of beneath most accountants to provide bookkeeping services, but the landscape has completely changed. And now I think whoever owns the numbers, whoever has control over the numbers owns that relationship. And we can provide a lot more value if we're in control of that, and we can systemize it and make it efficient, which means we have the opportunity to have more touch points with a client on a more regular basis, and we can provide it much more profitably than ever before. So just going back to the scope where you mentioned, okay, you've got set packages. I think you use practice ignition, don't you, to do your
we do,
proposals. So you don't have a live software-based approach to come up with a price with the customer in person, but you have these packages. How do you then determine so you clearly got what's in scope. How do you advise a client at that point when you're having that conversation, what is outside scope? How do you explain that to them?
And that is the most challenging part, as I'm sure you know as well from running your practice, that is the most challenging part of any client conversation. How do you get across you're a fixed fee-based business with add-ons? Do you know what I mean? And that's the real challenge, is because ultimately we don't want to have add-ons. Ultimately, we don't want to be charging people outside of scope. Now that is precisely why we still run timesheets. Okay, so perfect example. So we've got a client, photography and video production client, right? And they pay us about $1,000 a month ish. It's just over 12 a year that they pay us. Management accounts, all that sort of stuff, and regular touch points and whatnot. Now, what we do with them is we run the timesheet for the whole year, and we add lines to the timesheet as to the jobs we're performing. At the end of the year, we spent 14 grand in time on that client, and we sit down with them and we have a chat about it, and we go, right, these things were actually outside the scope, but we did them because it all felt within the retainer and it was a decent retainer and blah, 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 blah. And then when we've had that conversation, we make a decision on whether the retainer needs to go up or whether they were outside the scope. Now, we're going to bring that down to be quarterly reviews with these people, because as you well know, if you do it in January and you're not reviewing it till the following January, that's a really challenging conversation, but it's just been resourced. We haven't been able to do it any sooner than that. So the way we do it at the moment, rightly or wrongly, is we will do the work. In most cases, we will do the work and it will fall in the retainer, and then we'll have that discussion post about whether the retainer needs to increase or whether that was ad hoc and they need to pay a fee for that work. Because if they're on the advisory side, there's very little in principle that they won't get in their retainer, depending on the level they're at, if that makes sense. And if they're on the only one that's got a real question mark over it is the top one, because there's nothing above it, if that makes sense. If you're on the quarterly one and you start wanting monthly management accounts, you have to go to the monthly one. Do you see what I mean? So in principle, most of it will fit within a retainer. And then if there's real stretching of that, we'll have that conversation. But that conversation around that, how we do that, is had at the start. So everybody knows how we will track our time and how we'll then have a conversation with them later.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I understand. Interesting. There's a question here from Alistair asking, I would be quite interested to hear what sort of margins you're making in the business.
It's a really good question. When we priced up the advisory stuff, we did work out the margins on all of them, and gross margin wise, we were looking at about 60% on the advisory packages. We probably aren't delivering on that at the moment. We're probably delivering more 40, I would say, just based on efficiencies within our own business. But that is our goal, is to be at 60% on the advisory packages.
Sure. Thanks for sharing that, Joe. So, and do you go after a certain niche, or are you quite flexible with the industry sector that your clients are in? And it's more about, I guess, niching by activity. So you are looking for clients who would be a good fit for this particular added value service that you're offering. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's the second one, because they've got to have an eye for technology. They've got to be willing to be involved in technology in some way, shape, or form, because that's how our business operates. And they've got to have a willingness to change, and they've got to have a willingness, because most cases that we're taking them on because they want something different, if you know what I mean. That we're not taking them on because they want the same thing they're currently getting, because if they're getting it already, why would they need us to do it for them? Do you see what I mean? So most cases we're taking them on to make a difference and to add value and to make a change. So they've got to be willing to change and be willing to embrace technology. Is the key. So naturally that goes to digital marketing. Recruitment is quite a good one. But we're in a manufacturing business now. You know, a lot of manufacturing businesses don't want to embrace change and don't want to embrace technology, but these guys are absolutely loving it. So, you know, we're making a real difference here.
Yeah, absolutely. And where do you get, how do you find these type of clients? Because often it's the case that, most accountants want these type of advisory clients, but they struggle to find them and they struggle to land these clients. And they're wondering, how on earth do we go about trying to find these clients who are willing to pay for advisory, who are willing to pay, 4 figures a month on retainer packages to service them in this way? How do you go about finding them?
I think, without being controversial here, the reason people can't find them is because they don't know what they're looking for. Because the problem we've got in the industry at the moment is everybody is told they have to do advisory. And that is for me, that's the wrong approach. The right approach is that people need to understand what advisory is. And if you know what advisory is, which we believe we do, the people will come to us because of our message, what we talk about, the type of things we discuss, if you know what I mean, in our marketing and in my LinkedIn posts and things like that we're attracting the right people. And that's because it's in here. Advisory is ingrained in me because it's what I did, and I listened to your one with Alistair. If Alistair was Alistair Barlow that asked that question, which I imagine it is based on the question, he said similar sort of thing. He came through that and got that experience, and that he can then use, in his business. And the same for us here. Our first thought is advisory. So naturally, you kind of are what you think. You are what you believe, if that makes sense. So I think at the moment, a lot of accountants are thinking, I have to do this. And therefore they're not looking in the right place because they're not thinking in the right way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm not trying to criticize. What I'm trying to do is say, if you start thinking like a business owner, if you start thinking like an advisory based business and what that person wants from you and how you can help them, then you'll start looking in the right places.
Yeah. It's one of those things where, often people think that advisory is this kind of, this high level kind of McKinsey, Bain type consulting activity that they need to do, that they think, oh, I can't do that because I'm just a lowly accountant. There's no way I can do what these big investment firms are doing. But actually, it's not that. And it's just how we do what we do. We can do advisory from compliance. You can turn a VAT return or a set of accounts into advisory but actually communicating to a client in words that they understand about, how they can be more efficient when it comes to the direct taxes or indirect taxes, and actually helping them along the way. It doesn't have to be these glorified services that, people think they have to deliver. So what kind of things are you doing in your marketing? And are you actually getting results from it? So are you through social media marketing? What kind of activities are you doing to generate inquiries from these type of ideal clients?
So slowly is the answer to your question about getting traction. Very, very, very slowly. But that's mainly because we're not consistent at it. So again, it comes back to, there's two elements to it. There's the personal branding piece. So there's my experience and my knowledge and my thoughts, if you like. And then there's the business and what we offer as a team. So our business marketing at the moment is very kind of fluffy and just a bit of brand awareness. Who are we? Where are we? Some nice little motivational things and, little things like that, just to get the brand out there. And then we hired in March a management accountant out of industry to help the team. And, for example, him and I are doing a series on management accounting. So we've done a specific blog series and video series on management accounts, what it means, difference between that and a standard set of accounts. But then on the personal side of things, I am trying to post and share content that makes me seem like a leader and an expert in all things business. So last week I did one on goal setting, for example, and like why setting goals is important for your business. In a sense, has nothing about accountancy, but that gives the impression to a business owner that I am then a thought leader in the space of adding value. So the interesting point you just made that about, making advisory from a VAT return. We had a client ring us the other day and say, we've seen your advisory work being posted out. We want advisory. And I was like, I thought it's a bit strange because they just own a few properties,
Mm.
So I wonder what they want from that. And we had the conversation with them. It turns out they wanted tax advisory, and they saw the word advisory as advice on tax, if you like. So we've then got to tweak our message a little bit to make sure that what we're suggesting we can do is around the business advisory, and that was learning for us to make sure we're giving the right message. Clearly, we gave the wrong message in that terminology, if that makes sense, because the client thought we were doing something different. So, yeah, for me, it's about sharing, commenting, being active in the spaces that we want to be active in, being a thought leader in these spaces. So commenting on business issues, because people are always posting business issues on LinkedIn all the time. They're posting things about, the problem they've got, or this scenario or that scenario. And it's commenting on those and offering some real value to people. And yeah, we're very, very early days on that, so I can't comment too much on it, but it is very slow going.
Sure. So where is the majority of your kind of new business coming from at the moment? Is it still from referrals?
Yeah.
And so, okay, so going on to the actual delivery side of things, talk to us a bit about how do you actually deliver the advisory services that you talk about practically.
Yeah, so I did a conversation with Dave Selleck at for those who know him, at Digital Accounting Week, and I made a point of saying one of our core advisory apps, if you like, is Receipt Bank, because I really want people to understand, for me, automating the start is the way for us to make sure we can deliver the end, if that makes sense. If we're spending hours and hours and hours bookkeeping, we can't deliver it. We won't have the time to deliver the added value services on top. So we make sure that everything is, bank ruled in zero, auto published from Receipt Bank where applicable, and all these sorts of things, so that our bookkeeping is done to a standard that we expect, standardized chart of accounts across certain industries. So again, we can get the data out of systems very easily, because the key thing is getting the information into zero so we can take it out really easy. And then we use a combination of Fathom for our reporting. So our board pack production is done all in Fathom, and I'll come on to that in a sec. For our smaller clients, we use Clarity to help them understand those 7 key numbers that Clarity discuss, and then build action plans off the back of that. And we use the famous accounting software called Excel as a big part. So every forecast we produce is in Excel. We're yet to find a forecasting software that we agree with. We're yet to find a forecasting software that will be accurate enough for what we want to do. And so what we tend to do is do a lot of the work in Excel. We do a lot of download, manipulation, and upload So we do a lot of download from zero, manipulate in Excel, upload into Fathom to report it. Because that we find Fathom is from our perspective is the nicest and most kind of client friendly, let's call it, way of presenting data, because it's pretty. They like the graphs. It comes across well. And it comes back to everything. I talked to this about one of my members of the team the other day. If we present something well, people believe it. If you present something clunky, people start to question because they don't get it. As soon as they look at it and they think they understand it, they believe it. Just see what I mean? As soon as you present it in a clunky, unreadable, whatever the word is, manner, people start to question it because they don't understand it. And for me, that's really important, that we present things professionally, that look good, that make sense, and that a normal person can understand, because we forget as accountants that we do know a lot of information and a lot of technology, I'm saying technical words and things like that other people don't understand. I mentioned balance sheet to these guys here. They're a £7 million manufacturing business, and the MD was like, "What's balance sheet?" And I kind of mentioned it in a conversation, thinking he obviously knows what a balance sheet is, but actually he doesn't. Do you know what I mean? So I'm rambling a bit there, but our main process tends to be, for the higher level stuff, get it out of zero into Excel, manipulate it, and report that back to the client in Fathom or equivalent.
Excellent. Yeah, I think you're. I think there's some good points there in terms of it boils back to the point about the bookkeeping and actually managing the finance function and being in control of that as being the foundation and the fundamentals of advisory, because you can't provide advisory off a shaky foundation. And if you're relying on the client to manage the finance function and do the bookkeeping, then you're never going to be able to provide true advisory, because you can't rely on the numbers that are in front of you and actually take it on board, or ensuring that you've got a retainer to cover off reviewing it, whatever the case may be. That is fundamental, and that is a huge growth area for us. I mean, we've had the same. We used to be registered auditors. We knocked that on the head 2 years ago because it was, frankly, a ball ache, scrutiny from the institute. Clients hated it because it wasn't giving them any value. And I thought, right, we'll knock this on the head and we'll actually make more money doing bookkeeping. And we have. And you can make bookkeeping into a highly profitable service if you package it up in the right way and you use it as a springboard to provide all these advisory services that you've been doing.
100%. Now, there are firms out there, and I know them and they know me, and we speak regularly, that offer advisory services without bookkeeping because of the types of clients that they're working with and the types of people that are within those organizations. Do you see what I mean? That means they don't have to deliver the bookkeeping in order to deliver the advisory. So I completely understand when people say, I don't deliver bookkeeping, but I deliver high level advisory. For our practice, the types of clients we're picking up are traditionally more at the smaller end and growing. They don't understand the bookkeeping. So like you say, if we can automate that, and the same here, I'm in this place today. And I said to one of the girls who's a bookkeeper here, as finance need to control the narrative, not stock control people, not the production people, finance, because there's errors in their financial figures because of stuff that the production team haven't done properly. And they've just allowed that to happen in the finance team. And I'm saying, no, we control the narrative in the finance team, because if we control the narrative, we control the output, and therefore we can give good advice. And it's as simple as that, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about, we say we want to be that trusted advisor. Well, how do you get to that point? You get to that point by being the first person that the client thinks of when they have a problem. If you are the one that they are calling and you're the one that has the most touch points with them, they will call you for their problems, whatever they may be, and you'll become that trusted advisor. And the more 100%. Touch points you have, the more problems you're solving, you'll have that position, which then elevates you and amplifies the value that you're providing for a client, which is, everyone's goal at the end of the day. So just to, I think we're past the half-hour mark. So just to wrap this up, what kind of 1, 2, 3 pieces of advice would you have for accountants who perhaps want to break into advisory? What would you say to them? How do they go about doing so? Give them your words of wisdom.
I think there's a few things, and I think one of the things, there's 2 really key things I want to mention here. and the second one's a bit more controversial than the first. The first one is start small, like, and it sounds obvious, but like you said earlier, Reza, we are in the prime position. If there's any business market you could be in where you are in control of seeing some information and being able to upsell off the back of it, we are in that position because we can see the numbers in front of us, and we are all accountants. We're all smart people. We need to use that brain that we've got, that clearly we've got to be qualified accountants, to then use that to offer support and advice, no matter how small you think it might be. Run a P&L off zero for one of your clients that is up to date in real time, and read it, compare it to the last few periods, compare it to the last couple of years, see what it looks like, and just highlight the bits that you think look a bit strange. And then have a little look into those and go, that's a bit strange, I wonder what. And then all of a sudden you'll start to build this picture of what is going on within that business. The only way you'll be able to offer true advisory if you know what's going on inside that business. And the only way to do that is to look through transactions and understand and ask questions, and then ask those questions to that client. And at the early stages, you could even do that if you want to do it for free, as in you don't want to charge, and just say, so I noticed this on your P&L, your salary. We had the conversation again. I keep using this client. I'm in their office and I keep thinking about it, but we were talking earlier, and their direct labor is significantly lower at the moment than their indirect labor. And I noticed it. So that's, direct labor, the people that are making the stuff, indirect labor being the people that are sat in the offices. And I noticed it, and I was like, that's a bit strange. Had a conversation with them about it. And then when we talked about it, it was fairly obvious, because when they furloughed people back in March, the main people that were furloughed were the direct labor. The main people that weren't furloughed were the indirect labor. So actually it makes sense that year to date. But the fact that we asked the question meant that we were making sure we weren't missing anything. So it might be as simple as that, but just use Xero, use QuickBooks, whatever you use. I keep using Xero because we're 100% Xero, but and automate that process at the start. Automate Receipt Bank. Don't hesitate. The amount of accountants that are still hesitating on automation of Receipt Bank, get out there and do it properly, and think about it. And it'll take you a bit of time, but once you've done it, once you set up those supplier rules, once you set up those bank rules, you'll be smashing out the bookkeeping in no time, and you'll be able to go out and deliver the higher value services by showing your value to that client. And you need to be not afraid to show that value. You need to show them that you know what you're talking about, and you've got much more about you than a few clicks on a computer and a VAT return getting submitted, because that's what a lot of people think that we do. So that's the first point. The second point is, and this is the controversial one, is don't be sold by these software companies that are going to tell you that if you buy their software, you can deliver advisory and do no work to deliver it, because it's a lie. And I'm not going to name software companies' names on your show because it's probably unfair, but there are companies out there that are telling you if you buy their software, they'll do particular tasks for you without you doing anything, which means you can offer it to your clients for free or very cheap, and you are now a business advisor. And that is a lie. True business advisory is understanding the crux of that business and thinking and using this thing we've got here and thinking about it and giving advice. That is what advisory is, not running a few reports and emailing it to the client. So I think that's really important as well, because I see it all the time, and you probably know what I'm talking about, where people are offering free. If it's free, where's the value? How are they offering it for free? The value in what we do is that we think about it and we offer a real thoughts on what we genuinely think about that business. And I'm really passionate about that point, which is why I get a bit frustrated with it, because at the moment there's a lot of software companies trying to make it easy to do advisory, and that isn't what advisory is. We're not trying to do it easy, we're trying to do it properly. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And I'm really passionate about that point.
Thank you, Joe. Was there a third one, or was it just two?
Well, I got too passionate about the second one, so now I've probably forgotten about the third one.
Don't worry about it. I think you're spot on in terms of the, advisory is it's all about, fundamentally, it's about asking questions. It's about being curious.
It's about advice.
Absolutely. And asking.
That's
and,
the word.
and actually, the problem is, for the last 20, 30 years, accountants have become complacent. They've got too comfortable with the recurring fee model that we do year end, and we say, thank you very much, see you again next year. And as long as we haven't cocked up, the client will come back again. Times have changed. We've got to actually step up to the game and actually do what we were trained to do. We were trained to interpret a P&L. We were trained to be curious, to do, actually provide business advice. And we are well positioned to do so. A lot of accountants shy away from it because they don't think they can, but they absolutely can, because they're running their own businesses. They're seeing business day in, day out. They've got so many clients. You've got so many clients that you're dealing with. You can absolutely do this kind of stuff that Joe has talked about. So
yeah, and I think, sorry to jump in, I think the other key thing as well is if you can afford to hire from industry. That's what we've done. 90% of our staff, I mean, I know there's only 9 of us, but are from industry. That is our first point of hiring, is industry, because we get the right mentality and the right people through the door. So if you can afford to hire, or in the position of hiring, and you yourself feel not 100% comfortable with that advisory piece and you want some support in it, hire from industry and buy in the support that you can use to help grow that side of the business.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. We've done exactly the same thing. Hired from industry and built a virtual finance office team, and that is the most profitable arm of the practice.
Exactly.
So absolutely, hire people who are better than you, who have a different skill set to you, who can actually do this kind of stuff and add real value to clients. So Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you very much for spending the time today. If people want to connect with you and get in touch, where should they go?
Yeah, just the usual place. As a business, we're all over all of the socials: Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. Personally, find me on LinkedIn, or nephosaccountants.co. Give us a shout. One thing I'm really passionate about is helping other people. So if anyone's got any questions, ask in the group, speak to me on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to share anything that we've got, because at the end of the day, there's enough out there for us all to go and smash it and help all these businesses that need our help. So shout me and I'm more than happy to help.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Joe. So as you heard, if you've got any questions for Joe, feel free to put them in the comments below. If you're in the group, if you're listening to this on the podcast, then you can reach out to Joe on LinkedIn and connect with him there, and he'll be more than happy to share with you. If you've listened on the podcast, you can come and join the Facebook group. Similarly, if you've listened on the Facebook group, come and listen to the other episodes that we have on the podcast, which is Transform Your Profits for Accountants. Thank you very much for joining us today, and I'll see you in the next episode. Take care and have a great week.